Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television on Channel 31. Hello and welcome to News at 8 reaching live on TV. We'll begin with the headlines. Persons living with disability at Kisi Dockyard appeal for basic social amenities. Minister of Energy lauds energizing development NDF Sierra Leone for improving access to sustainable energy. And residents in Freetown say blocked drainages caused flash floods. These stories plus more all are part of the news. Stay with us for the next 55 minutes. Now, we begin at Kisi Dockyard, where persons living with disability have raised concern over what they describe as poor living conditions and the deplorable state of the road network leading to the community. My colleague Christiana Kamara was there. She takes up the story.
The road bad for we. In terms of living up, mosquitoes they kill we, the gutter they all block.
The road is in a deplorable condition for us. The living conditions are poor. Mosquitoes are disturbing us. Gutters are all blocked with dirt, and there are potholes everywhere.
They say
the main road, which is heavily used by companies transporting goods and gas, is in a deplorable condition. According to them, the situation has made movements difficult and unsafe, especially for persons living with disabilities, and has also affected business activities in the area. Members of the United Polio Brothers and Sisters Association said the community continues to face a number of challenges, including poor sanitation, lack of adequate health care, unstable electricity, and limited access to basic social services. Speaking to SLBC, Bumi Cole expressed concern over what she described as rising health and environmental risks in the area, pointing to nearby industrial activities, including gas-related factories. She added that persons with disabilities are finding it difficult to sustain small businesses due to lack of support and mobility challenges.
By then, same day, we them to carry us to the load. We all wheelchair be me for let get word for pass with in the morning.
As of now, when those tankers are parked along the road, even to have access to move with our wheelchairs is challenging unless we go around. Whenever we express our dissatisfactions over the situation, the drivers ignore and insult us. We are not happy about that, and that is why we are calling on the government to assist by relocating us from here as our lives are at risk.
But that's make we plead to Papa government, may they assist with that. Because right now we own life, it is at stake.
The Secretary General of the Association, Saidu Abdullahi Sise, described the situation as serious, citing poor infrastructure, inadequate funding, and damage caused by a past fire incident, which he said has weakened the operations of the center. He said although the center continues to provide skills training and empowerment programs for persons with disabilities, limited resources remain a major constraint. Mr. Sise called for financial support to be channeled through the Ministry of Social Welfare, the Sierra Leone Union on Disability Issues, SLUDI, and the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, saying this will ensure proper coordination and effective use of resources. He stressed the need for stronger enforcement of disability inclusion policies, especially in employment, education, and public infrastructure.
The international community, the UN Convention and other, international organizations, they have made policy to include persons living with disability in all aspects of life. But in Sierra Leone, we are facing challenges on this policy, and we have the 2011 Act, which a lot of policies from that act is not followed.
The association appealed for urgent intervention to improve on the road network, strengthen social services, and the overall living conditions of persons with disabilities in the community. SLBC News in Freetown, Christiana Kamara reporting.
And now, Minister of Energy Cyril Grant has lauded the energizing development endeavor in Sierra Leone for its achievements and impact in improving access to sustainable energy solutions in Sierra Leone. According to the minister, although the global program has concluded, the government of Germany has agreed to support a new initiative on sustainable use of renewable energy, or SURE project. He was speaking at the high-level closing event held at the Country Lodge Hotel in Freetown as the project concludes after almost a decade of existence. Here's the report.
And I hope you take this energy from Sierra Leone to your new endeavors.
The event was intended to showcase the achievements and impact of the NDEF programs and to celebrate partnerships which has lasted for nearly a decade. It was an opportunity to bring up lessons learned in the quest to improve access to sustainable energy solutions across Sierra Leone. The project, Transformational Energy, uses for Sierra Leone Phase 1, uses renewable energies, technologies and digitalization for promoting green growth in Sierra Leone and the energizing development through the improving the lives of Sierra Leoneans through promotion of sustainable access to modern services. This was quite evident in the testimonies of beneficiaries of the projects.
Jala University is a rural university and it's the best place we can do energy studies.
The German government and the European Union, who donated the solar energy through GIZ and the project to the school. Now, most of the students experience constant light in the school.
The global program manager, NDEV, Nornash Bandi, said since 2017, 10.6 million euros was invested to provide access to energy and supported the availability of clean cooking access and low-carbon energy future. He said it has been a journey that has helped reshape the energy landscape and practically and powerfully powered local economies.
And since 2005, just to share a few numbers with you, NF has reached more than 36 million people with modern energy access.
Development partners express appreciation on the implementation of NDEF programs, which have been implemented by GIZ in Sierra Leone. A multi-donor partnership between the Netherlands Directorate General for International Cooperation, the Norwegian Agency for Development and Cooperation, the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, and the European Union, which is co-financing the TUSL project Sierra Leone. The Minister of Energy, Cyril Grant, congratulated the energizing development NDEV Sierra Leone for its achievements and impact in improving access to sustainable energy solutions in Sierra Leone. He reaffirmed government's commitment for the initiative on sustainable use of renewable energy.
Our partnership with the government of Germany and the European Union in the energy sector continues to grow stronger. Following discussions with our development partners, the government of Germany has agreed to support a new initiative, the Sustainable Use of Renewable Energy Project, which we've heard about, SURE.
The implementing agency GIZ, through the country director for Sierra Leone and Liberia, Raphael Franklin, thanked NDEV for entrusting the GIZ with the mandate of successfully implementing its programs over the 9-year period. SLBC, Dennis Fraser reporting. Now, residents of Gaza community along Mountain Court in central Freetown are calling for urgent government interventions following repeated accidents, falling rocks and erosions whenever it rains heavily. They say continue to endanger lives and property. Esther Susanette Bassi visited the area and put together the following reports.
As the rainy season approaches, concerns have been raised by residents living in Gaza along Mountain Court community. As you can see behind me are slopes that have become heavily eroded and occupied by mud. So SLBC took its camera to hear from residents as to the measures that should be put in place to tackle and prevent such disaster.
This is Gaza area on along Mountain Court community in the central parts of Freetown. Here, residents say they fear for their lives each day that passes by. These hanging rocks on the hill, poor drainage leading to flash floods are seen as time bombs, especially in slopey location. People here also say are risky for even those using these routes.
We are facing serious challenges in this community. The road has become unsafe following several accidents, and water flowing down from the hillside continues to pose a serious threat to residents.
We call on government for letting pay attention on a side like this.
For Idrissa, who is chairman for the Bike Riders Union in the area, describes the hill as disaster-prone. He claims several reports are being made to police and other authorities, but nothing is done to address the situation so far.
As you can see, this area remains very dangerous for people living here. I have made several reports to the police, appealing for authorities to help relocate residents in order to prevent further disasters. Prior to now, a severe incident occurred in this community, where about 6 to 8 people reportedly lost their lives. This is why I continue to describe the area as a potential disaster risk zone.
A resident, Kadiatu, recalls a moment when a makeshift structure collapsed, leading to a huge stone rolling from the very spot. She says if proactive measures are not taken, it may lead to loss of lives and property.
The disaster, the accidents where they happen here, Boku.
The disasters and accidents occurring in this area are becoming too frequent. We will be very grateful if the authorities could break these large stones and properly level the area.
They can't help for break this stone, then level and to how if a day go gladden. Because yes, until you go they pass rain, they can stone come on, it can whap you.
The earlier they say may be better. Implementing safety measures, including having proper drainage systems, disaster may be imminent as the rains intensify. For SLBC News, Esther Suzanette Bassi reporting.
Now, prior to the number of flash floods that have occurred in Sierra Leone causing disasters and leaving only its homeless, similar occurrence is at the verge of happening if actions are not taken. SLBC Cynthia Kamara has cited blocked gutters on a third two main streets in the city, which are believed to be mainly caused by flooding in the past. She explained her findings in this report.
Many lives have been lost, properties destroyed in time past as a result of flooding in Sierra Leone. Most of those memories are still fresh in the hearts and minds of family members and as a country. The causes of those devastating experiences are still being practiced by Sierra Leoneans. On a tour to main roads and streets in Freetown, I observed that majority of the gutters are blocked with waste materials encompassing household waste and mega cola bottles, among others, that has barricaded the easy flow of water. Here at Sander Street, with only few drops of rain, has flooded the streets of Freetown as a result of blocked gutters. Water that should pass through drainages and gutters has been diverted to the main streets, causing discomfort for shop owners and pedestrians. Should Sierra Leoneans wait till disaster occurs before taking action? was the question I first put to the Director of Communications, Disaster Management Agency, Mohamed Elba.
Waste management is one of the major factors responsible for floods in Freetown. That has been established, and we've done a lot of research around this, and it has been concluded that waste management is one of the major factors. So, and how do we arrive at that particular conclusion? It's because people are taking their dirt and throw them in the gutters, and when it is clogged, when it is rain, the rain will not have a way. It will find a way for itself. So that is the more reason why we are appealing to members of the public. Please let us be watchdogs for ourselves in our communities. Let us look at anybody that is there to throw dirt in our gutters, and let us take action. Let us pursue them. Let us take action like what Cyril Harrod-Smith is doing along Samba Gutter. Let us ensure that even ourselves we stop doing that. Let us just wait when it is raining and we take our dirt and throw it in the guts, in our drainages. That it is inimical. It is not good. It's a recipe for flooding. And when
what do we stand to experience this year as a country? What do we stand to experience this year as a country when the rain reached its peak in July and August as a result of the blocked gutters and waterways? With the recent weather forecast from the Meteorological Agency predicting heavy storms and rain this year, Sierra Leoneans should take responsibility as watchdogs in community by signaling alarm of those disposing wastages in gutters, hence saving lives and properties as the rain approaches. For SABC News, Cynthia Kamara reporting.
This is SABC News at 8, reaching you live on Channel 31 on TV and across our social media streaming platforms. We continue with more human interest story. An EDSA pole caught fire in the morning hours of 1st June in New Englandville community in Freetown. Though residents rushed to the scene to quench the fire, cables were burnt down, including a fiber optic cable connected to the pole. This relates the unfortunate incident to overloading of the only transformer that serves the entire community. Suleiman Babatouye reports.
This has been the issue in recent years at New Englandville in Freetown. Frequent cable sparks and blackouts, even when other areas enjoy frequent electricity supply. This is the only transformer that supplies electricity to New Englandville and its growing areas, including Omole Bush and Commune Pole, have given much workload to this transformer. When the transformer is overloaded due to excessive power demand from appliances in connected houses, offices and companies, the cables spark, which sometimes results to cables and poles catching fire, like the one that greeted the community people at around 7 a.m. this Monday. Though former councillor aspirant Omar Yusuf Fekar swiftly intervened, the EDSA and fiber optic cables had already burned.
Really difficult at this moment where this kind of issue happen now.
It is rather unfortunate that it happens after the transformer has been maintained and we are enjoying sustainable electricity. If this issue is not addressed, it might lead to the transformer being burnt completely. EDSA needs to monitor the lines because the transformers have their limits in terms of voltage. If the load goes beyond that limit, it results to the problem we are having.
Because that thing they forget, it causes them problem then.
Omar Yusuf Fekar also called on the fiber operators to go to the area and fix the fiber optic cable that was burnt down completely. Responding to the pole fire incident at New Englandville, EDSA standby electrician at New Englandville, Christian Durin, appealed for a transformer to be installed at Omole Bush, which also gets its electricity from the same transformer that supplies electricity to New Englandville community. He said the fiber optic cable placed very close to the EDSA cables ignited the fire after the cable sparked and dropped on the fiber rubber.
By right, for put one transformer It's at Omole Bush.
There is supposed to be a transformer at Omole Bush. We all know how large the community has become, and there are people with over 2 to 3 refrigerators. So when all of those appliances consume power, it results to spark and fire because the transformer or cables will withstand the power.
Free day, we'll not be get freezer. We don't buy one freezer. So man they get one. Now they get 3.
Though the burnt cables have been replaced, the community people also called for another transformer to avoid the reoccurrence of such incidents and blackouts. SLBC News, Sulaiman Babatue reporting.
Now, access to quality health care remains a challenge for many health facilities across the country due to limited medical equipment and resources. In a bid to improve on service delivery and to support vulnerable patients, entrepreneur and philanthropist John Brewer has donated a range of medical supplies to hospitals and health care centers in both districts and at the Aberdeen Women's Center in Freetown. Esther Nene Kamara tells us more.
So I officially hand over these supplies to the government hospital. Thank you.
The windfall includes oxygen cylinders, wheelchairs, crutches, neonatal respiratory, laboratory supplies, blood pressure machines, and other essential medical equipment aimed at improving patient care and supporting healthcare workers in the delivery of services. Beneficiary institutions include the Aberdeen Women's Center in Freetown, Bow Government Hospital, and a number of community health centers across both districts. John Brewer said the support was motivated by his desire to give back to society and contribute to strengthening the country's health care system. He noted that many patients, particularly vulnerable groups, continue to face difficulties accessing adequate medical support due to shortage of essential equipment.
Being that our country is lagging behind in terms of healthcare, the overall efficiency and delivery system, healthcare system, we lag way behind out of 191 countries. So this is just my own way of helping. I've always had the intention to assist my country in whatever little way.
A donation of crutches, wheelchairs, and a bag of rice was made to the Milton Magai Cheshire Home in Bow City. Beneficiaries expressed appreciation for the gesture, describing it as timely and significant.
Definitely we appreciate that so much, and we are going to use it deliciously and ensure that where it's supposed to be rendered, it happens. So it means a lot for us, so which is why we as a management, we appreciate it and definitely will put it in a good use.
They said the items will help improve service delivery, enhance patients' comfort, and also address some of the challenges faced by healthcare providers. The donation forms part of John Brewer's ongoing humanitarian efforts to support healthcare and community development initiatives across the country. For SLBC, Esther Nene Kamara reporting.
Now, as the 2026 Hajj, a religious rite by Muslims, comes to an end, pilgrims visit the mosque and gravesite of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, to show respect and to offer prayers. The process marks the completion of the pilgrimage journey to the Holy Land of Mecca. My colleague Yusuf Soma has the report.
Thousands of pilgrims traveling for Hajj and Umrah visited Al-Masjid Nabawi in Medina to offer prayers at the Mosque of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The mosque, the second holiest site in Islam, draws Muslims from around the world to perform the 5 daily prayers, with many seeking to pray in the Rauda area between the Prophet's pulpit and his burial chamber. The visit to Medina is traditionally made either before or after the rite of Hajj in Mecca as part of the broader pilgrimage journey. Within the mosque complex lies Al-Rauda and Al-Sharifa, where the gravesite of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, is located alongside the graves of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar bin al-Khattab. Pilgrims observed strict etiquette at the site, offering salam greetings while maintaining silence and order within the masjid and the grave sites. Access to the immediate area around the graves is regulated to ensure respect and allow pilgrims and visitors the opportunity to pay their respect in a serene environment. For many pilgrims, the visit to Al-Masjid Al-Nabawi and the Prophet's grave site was an emotional culmination of their spiritual journey. The experience is marked by increased prayers, reflection, and remembrance of Prophet's life and teachings of Islam. Officials and management of the mosque provide guidance, crowd control, and services to accommodate the large number of pilgrims and visitors across the world that come daily to connect with this central place in Islamic history and faith. As pilgrims complete their pilgrimage rites, they will soon depart from the holy land of Mecca to their various countries. SLBC News, Yusuf Mosire Suma reporting.
You are still watching news reaching live from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television on Channel 31. Now, Women on Mining and Extractives, or WOMI, has launched a video documentary on the impact of the 2021 Cybersecurity and Crimes Act. With support from the Caucus World Alliance for Citizens Participation, WOMI invited the public to contribute their systematic impact analysis on the real-life challenges, legal implications, and rights violations faced by civil society organizations, journalists, and citizens on the Sierra Leone Cybersecurity and Crimes Act of 2021. Howard Williams with the report.
The Cyber Security and Crime Act 2021 report and its documentary captures citizens and stakeholders' views on the law, documents incidents of abuse, and highlights the social, legal, and human rights dimensions of digital repression. The consultations utilized a diverse range of participants from government institutions, CSOs, media houses, and community representatives across the nation's 4 regions. Theophilus Benda of the Community Media Network said their expertise was utilized to capture the initial overview of the public surrounding the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act 2021. According to WOME, the aim is to mobilize a unified advocacy front to advance digital rights and freedom of expression in Sierra Leone. Esther Finda Kande, Executive Director of Women Sierra Leone, said that following the launch, different communities will be engaged to create more awareness about the law and open the channel for citizens' engagement with authorities responsible for review of the law. Comments from the audience indicated that women and the disabled, not just journalists and CSOs, are particularly vulnerable to some sections of the Cybersecurity and Crime Act 2021, which require clearer definitions for terms like cyberbullying. The documentary was generally commended for highlighting the lack of public understanding about private space versus public space, the appropriate use of these spaces, and the implications of message forwarding on social media. There was an emerging consensus for a national dialogue to review the 2021 Act and to examine the lacunas existing between freedom of expression and hate speech and between the interpretation of the cybercrime and the limitations on freedom of expression. Many called for the decriminalization of certain aspects of the Act, and many supported the establishment of regulatory thresholds so that not all cybercrime matters are necessarily handled by the police. Moses Masakwe from the Human Rights Commission said that in the advent of social media, the nation should make full use of the post-legislative review of the Act as the nation approaches its elections. National Cybersecurity Coordinator Marima Yoma said they recognized the need to review the Act based on the evidence created by WOME's research. She also called for more application of jurisprudence to the appropriate criminal and civil pathways ways in cases involving cyber violations. Mohamed Kone, on behalf of his fellow SLAG executives, supported a civic digital space where everyone can feel constitutionally protected and not intimidated by internet freedom, underscoring that many CSO and media position papers have been vocal about the Cybercrime and Cybersecurity Act since 2021. This gathering of the media, CSOs, the public and policy handlers was an outcome of the agitation arising since the legislation of the Cybercrime and Cybersecurity Act, supporting further widespread consultation and awareness raising about the 2021 Act.
Now to the regions, Putstoko districts to be specific. The farm project manager of Enviro-1, Mr. Baisheka has officially handed over a newly constructed water well to the people of Mayaya community in Kafobulon, Putstoko district. The water well is part of more than 20 wells constructed by Enviro-1 across the country to improve access to safe and clean drinking water. Al Williams again with the report.
Compassion, partnership, health, dignity, and hope made possible through the support of Enviro-1 and Trinity United Methodist Church, Mullica Hill, New Jersey, USA. Mr. Wuri appealed to Mayaya residents to take proper care of the facility through regular maintenance and ensure it serves the community for many years with clean and safe drinking water.
It pass, say, na source of water. So meaning not to just for say, na for kange water, na in the mean so. It pass, say, na source of water. And then tell we say this, ma tell una say, this water well, na a symbol. When I like a mark, where which one they say symbol, na a mark where, na for love, mobotur.
The project manager reminded the gathering that when people come together in service, lives are transformed. He also said that Enviro-1 is implementing a microfinance program that has benefited many people in Kafubulum Chiefdom and other parts of the country, and the organization operates a 40-acre palm kernel farm in Tonkolili district. The section chief of Mayaya community, Pa Alimami Fori Kamara II, expressed appreciation to Enviro-1 for the timely intervention, which he said will help reduce the burden caused by the lack of access to clean drinking water.
Then they come try for hand over this water well to we, the Maya community people. Now the first people where they gladly and appreciate Mr. David and the wife and the Enviro-1 community. So if that be the case, I'm not there for talk much.
He assured the organization that the community will continuously maintain the facility for the benefit of present and future generations. Representing the youth, the principal of the Mayaya Community School, Kumrabai Conte, said the water well will greatly assist pupils and residents, describing water as life. He recalled that in the past, pupils often faced difficulties in obtaining water, which sometimes resulted in late arrival at school. He thanked Enviro-1, especially the Chief Executive Officer and staff, for making the Water Well project a reality.
In this funding, because some of them projects then are people that they come together and put small things for CC they happen. So I want to also tell them thank you.
The commissioning of the well formed the highlight of the ceremony.
Now, the Freetown Cheshire Home has unveiled its newly renovated boys and girls dormitories, marking a major upgrade in residential facilities for children and young adults with disability in Sierra Leone. The Freetown Cheshire Home was founded in 1962 as a residential facility for children and young adults with disability. Yusuf Morsi Suma again with the report.
with joyous moments, smiles on the faces of the kids as they welcomed the team from Global Mercy Ship, who sponsored the renovation of the dormitories. The estimated cost for the renovation project is $21,000 as a way to address the long-standing infrastructure needs, including improved ventilation, safer sleeping arrangement, and accessible bathrooms designed to support people with disabilities, mobility, and independence. The chairman of the Freetown Cheshire Home Committee, Dr. Abdullahi Dumbuya, said the upgrades were carried out to create a more dignified, safe, and comfortable living environment aligned with the home's mission of care and inclusion for children with disabilities.
But in terms of inclusion, when it comes to the dormitories, I think it's brought a lot of comfort. This renovation has brought in quite a lot of comfort, a lot of joy and fun, and ability to be able to get our kids to move around freely, to live in a very conducive environment. And this is one of the pillars of our strategic plan in the Cheshire Home.
Mr. Dumbuya further thanked the Global Mercy Ship for the facility provided in 2003-2004 and the renovated buildings. However, he called for more support as he highlighted plans and numerous challenges in the home.
Firstly, it's the amount of support, the amount of financial support we receive from government. We're grateful for what we have in at the moment, but it's not enough. And we want to say that's a big challenge for us to run this home. When we did our calculation, we have a shortfall of nearly 120 million extra, 120,000 new Leones. So financial support is one challenge. Water facility is a huge challenge. We also talk about the issue around maintaining the other structures. We've had these 2 dormitories renovated, but there are other, there's the classrooms, there are the vocational skills that needs to be renovated. And so there are huge challenges still with us in the home. We need more teachers. We only have, 5 teachers. We run a primary school. We want about, up to maybe 7 teachers. And it's not that they don't want to come and teach. It's the fact that we want them to get PIN codes, because that's an encouragement to them. So we're appealing to Teaching Service Commission to support us with PIN codes. And so that's another challenge. We have
Ibrahim Richard Koroma, fondly known as Chichabi, was brought to the home at age 4, taught in the school, and served as a staff. He expressed some excitement and shared his life experience during his days in the home.
The buildings are falling apart. So I'm happy that the Mercy Ships have been able to come through some connections to repair the home, and today we are opening the home. So I'm really, really very happy about this rehabilitation of the home.
The managing director of Global Mercy Ship, Matthew Moray, explained the rationale behind Global Mercy Ship's humanitarian intervention in the home.
Cheshire Home is one of our partners in Sierra Leone that we work with. We just have a real heart for this mission that we do here. We've had many years of working with the Cheshire Home, and about a year ago we started working on a new project at the Cheshire Home, and today we were able to come and open it all up.
After the unveiling, staff guided visitors through the updated dormitories, highlighting features such as reinforced flooring, better lighting, standard beds, bathrooms, and storage spaces for personal belongings. Caregivers noted that the improved layout will make daily routines easier and allow staff to provide support more efficiently. The renovation also incorporated feedback from residents and families to ensure the spaces meet both practical needs and the preferences of those who live in the home. The completion of the boys and girls dormitories are to ongoing efforts at the Freetown Cheshire Home to strengthen its residential care services. Officials said the project reflects continued investment in facilities that promote safety, comfort, and respect for residents. SLBC News, Yusuf Mosire Suma reporting.
Now, from effort on boosting disability education to government performance tracking record. As the Institute for Governance Reform IGR has launched its Salon Development Scorecard looking at governance performance over the years. Now, the report captured around 100 most impactful outcomes in Sierra Leone. Its National Development Plan highlighting progress, challenges, and possible targets by 2030. Aminata Saisi sent in the report read in our studio by Esther Susanette Bassi.
You can also take this data, you compare it to 2017.
The Salon Development Scorecard examined the midterm National Development Plan and the 100 most impactful results from government undertakings. The research captures agriculture, food security, human capital development, youth employment, public sector reform, and infrastructure and technology for economic transformation, among others. The report stated that government has made significant progress in establishing gender-based violence information management systems across the country, gender units in all ministries, 30% women representation in parliament and ministerial positions, but less improvement in physical and sexual assault cases, stating that the Rainbow Center registered 3,035 cases in 2025. For mineral resources, the report stated that although the mining sector contributed 3.2% of the country's GDP, no mining site has been rehabilitated and that mining contributes 70% export earning, but is still less than 5.2 domestic revenue. On job creation, around 35,000 jobs were created annually out of the expected 75,000 to tally with government's intended 500,000 by 2030, according to research. IGR's scorecard also touched on the prevailing drug crisis, which the report said has risen sharply. As the country gears up for 2028, IGR observed that access to reliable electricity in major towns would continue to be an issue. For health, it was stated in the report that government achieved its 50% of maternal and infant mortality reduction rate, and in the fisheries sector, the researchers said government achieved its target with an annual haul of 250,000 metric tons, exceeding its 150,000 target by 2030. However, there was a moderate progress in rice importation as imports fell from $163 million in 2023 to $159 million in 2024. Significant progress in rice cultivation was achieved according to the report, stating that land area under rice cultivation exceeded 600,000 hectares in 2025. These findings, according to IGR, were data from MDA's Development Partners Report, international and expert benchmarking reports and indices, and direct verifications by the Salon Development Scorecard team.
Well, away from the IGR governance scorecard, it's now time for our sports updates.
Upon entering the facility, the Benefits Mankind Ambassador, Augustus Carbo, was treated to a vibrant welcome by the resident children, who performed an Islamic song of gratitude to celebrate the official opening of the home. This ambitious humanitarian project was designed to deliver sustainable care, shelter, and life-changing development opportunities for vulnerable children residing within that particular part. The commissioning ceremony attracted a massive turnaround, drawing significant representation from local Muslim community leaders, regional stakeholders, and passionate sport enthusiasts. A succession of community leaders and guest speakers took turns praising the robust humanitarian partnership that brought the facility to life. Addressing the gathering, orphanage manager Sheikh Abdul Rashid Kamara extended formal appreciation to the international charity Benefit Mankind and its executive team in the United Kingdom, noting that they are incredibly grateful to Benefit Mankind for their exceptional work in making the home a reality. He further utilized the platform to appeal to stakeholders for sustained and long-term support to guarantee the facility's operational sustainability. Speakers throughout the event noted that the orphanage stands as a symbol of hope, opportunity, and a brighter future.
We don't have sponsor, we don't have any donation from elsewhere, but we seek the consent of the executive to provide support for these children. Until I came across the CEO of Benefit Mankind, who is Dr. Abdul Samad Mullah of UK, the CEO. So I explained to him about the children. So Benefit Mankind started giving support to the children here in Sierra Leone.
As part of the ceremonial proceedings, Carbo oversaw the distribution of essential welfare items. The absolute delight of the afternoon was the presentation of official Blackburn Rovers football kit, which were enthusiastically received by the boys. Speaking to the press following the unveiling, the Leone Stars and Blackburn Rovers winger Augustus Carbo expressed profound joy over the successful completion of the home and emphasizing his deep-seated desire to balance his professional career with impactful work.
To be honest, I'm really honored. To be part of this organization, and today's event was really successful. It was more than what I expected it to be. So yeah, I'm really happy that we've officially opened the orphanage here in Sierra Leone as an ambassador of Benefit Mankind. Yeah, because I always believe in giving back. It's something that was given to me by my mom. It's something that I learned from her. It means a lot because I don't always want to be remembered as a footballer. I want to remember as someone who has helped people, who has changed life of so many people. So
the Waterloo facility is now fully operational and standing as a testament to the powerful impactful generated and when professional sport figures align with global humanitarian organizations to uplift local communities.
Well, from the sports news, we bring news to a closer before that a recap of headlines. Persons living with disability at Kisidokiad in the east end of Freetown have raised several concerns over issues affecting them, including poor road network and wash facility, among others. They also drew the attention of government and other humanitarian organizations to come to their aid amid the poor living conditions they go through. The Minister of Energy, Seil Grant, has lauded the energizing development of Sierra Leone for its achievements and impact in improving access to sustainable energy solutions in Sierra Leone. He was speaking at the high-level closing event held at the Country Lodge Hotel in Freetown as the project concludes after almost a decade of existence. And finally, some residents in Freetown have amplified their voices to the Freetown City Council to do continuous clearing of shallow drainages causing flash floods in the capital whenever it rains heavily. And that's it. That's all we have time for in this edition of News Hour, which came to you from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television and Channel 31. Also be on the lookout for the first edition of the news coming your way this afternoon at 3. Coming up at 9 this morning is your breakfast program, Good Morning Sierra Leone. And at 10, the news in brief. Keep watching the public service broadcaster, the SLBC, for the very best in broadcasting. Remember, it's your trusted news source and the authentic voice of Sierra Leone. Keep watching. Have a splendid day. Goodbye.
salon for Puebla we are. I say salon man and woman and Samito. Waiting Louis sweet salon for Puebla we are. Waiting do we sweet salon for Puebla. Waiting do we sweet salon for Puebla. I say salon man and woman as a people. Waiting do we sweet salon for Puebla we are.